The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or TCJA, has been passed for about 6 months now, and there's still plenty of questions that businesses, even individuals, have. Rachel Pappy is partner and vice president of Polston Tax Resolution and Accounting. She's joining us more to talk about the TCJA. And let me ask you this question, it's something I've been curious about. Is the IRS as helpful and friendly as they are to companies such as yours as they are for Joe Public?
The IRS is lacking resources, is probably the kindest way I can say that.
And this is actually part of why they made a lot of these changes, because people were complaining about that.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. So specifically, we have been talking a lot internally and externally with the IRS and with CPAs and attorneys about what this major legislation, tax reform, is going to mean for tax attorneys and tax preparers, particularly CPAs and tax preparers who haven't received much of any guidance from the IRS on how to apply this law. We're already in 2018. This law is effective on 2018 tax returns. So they'll get filed next year in 2019. Right. They're going to be due in April. But as this year is going on, we're waiting for some more guidance from the IRS, or some guidance from the IRS on how to apply and interpret some of the pieces of this legislation that are confusing.
You know, it seems like the IRS would want you to, because you guys are great conduits between businesses and that sort of thing, so that they kind of level it out and we'd see less problems. What do you see? Do you see that they will come out with that guidance? Do you feel that it will be beneficial?
In our conversations with the IRS and other agencies, we feel that they're sort of in a predicament themselves where this is from the IRS agents we've spoken with. They haven't received the guidance they need. The IRS isn't it's not the agency that wrote this bill.
Oh, okay. That's right, yeah.
You have to think about it.
I didn't
the
think
fact
about that,
that Congress wrote this bill and all the staff members of Congress came together and said, we want this and we want this changed and we want this changed. And then boom, you have a bill with things written in the margins and scribbled in at the last second, and a lot of overlap or maybe vague language that now the IRS has to go through and say, this is how we're going to replace this section, and this is how we're going to. And so I think they're trying to wait on guidance as well.
And we know with the government, sometimes it's snail's pace. A lot of times when we actually see some change, but these, how soon do maybe you think that we can actually see an implementation of these new guidelines? Right.
So what we have been saying to tax preparers and to tax attorneys is, right now we would recommend a plain reading of the law. So take the plain language and use that to interpret it without jumping through hoops or saying, here's what I think could be done with this law. Plain reading is the most conservative, safe bet. That's the safe end of the spectrum. We're tax attorneys, we like to fight. And so when there is vague language, we love it. Vague language means it's open for interpretation and an opportunity for some good tax planning. So if you want to be safe, take the most basic interpretation and utilize it, and you'll probably pass an audit. If you want to maximize the tax benefit, though, you may want to get with somebody who's willing to fight what some of this language says.
And I would imagine, too, as we wrap things up here, you want somebody who has gone through a company that's been through these experiences of tax changes, because they know how the IRS works, more or less, and that's where Polston Tax actually comes in, is that you guys have that experience.
Right, exactly. And one thing I don't think a lot of people understand is that after these tax returns are filed in 2019 with these TCJA changes, the IRS still has 3 years to audit somebody on that. And let's say you get audited in 2022 on this 2018 tax return. So we're several years now in the future, 4 years in the future. And let's say that audit gets concluded in 2023. And you disagree, you appeal it to tax court. It may be 2 years before you get on the tax court docket. Now you're in 2025 appealing these changes, and you're probably setting precedent on law that hasn't been previously has no precedent.
Yeah, and with changes, people are like, there's a lot of work that has to go along with it, and that is why you need the experts at Polston Tax Resolution and Accounting. They have 5 locations in Oklahoma City, Edmond, Norman, Tulsa, Wichita. Call them up at 401-801-2146. They also assist clients nationwide. There are several ways you can get into contact with Polston Tax Resolution and Accounting. Just look for Polston Tax on all social media. Their website, polstontax.com. Thank you, Rachel.
We are